General Hospital spoilers reveal that Willow is unraveling, not in soft silence, but in a rising, silent storm that churns deeper within her every time she thinks about the betrayal that has shattered the core of her carefully guarded heart. For months, she believed in Drew. Trusted him through every fragile step of her recovery, leaned into his embrace when the grief of losing her child felt too heavy, and convinced herself that love, no matter how broken, could be repaired with time and tenderness. But that illusion has been destroyed in a moment too cruel to bear, a revelation too vile to comprehend. Drew was not only unfaithful. He was unfaithful with Nina, her own estranged mother. It's not just a matter of betrayal now, it's a desecration of everything Willow thought was sacred. And as that truth sinks deeper into her consciousness, something inside her begins to fracture irreparably. The emotional suppression that has defined Willow for so long, her ability to contain her anguish, to smile through pain, to put others before herself, no longer functions. The mechanisms that once shielded her are now collapsing one by one. What Drew and Nina stole from her was more than dignity. They stole her agency, her trust, her future, and her belief that love could exist without manipulation. And in the shadow of that realization, Willow's grief turns cold and sharp. It no longer trembles, it hardens. Her mind, once clouded by hope, becomes crystal clear in its pain. The future she envisioned is now smeared in the blood-stained tint of betrayal, and she no longer sees a path forward that doesn't end in a reckoning. As the day of the wedding progresses, Willow's composure becomes a mask she can barely keep on. Each passing moment becomes heavier. Each breath a battle to hold back the tidal wave threatening to overtake her. And then Nina appears, not with remorse, but with reluctant truths. The admission is real. The affair was not a mistake of passion, but a series of moments, deliberate and hidden. Drew was not drugged, coerced, or confused. He pursued Nina, her mother, with intention. Both before and after that fateful 4th of July. And suddenly, everything makes sense. The strange guilt in Drew's eyes. The subtle avoidance when she mentioned the past. The unspoken rift between Drew and Nina that seemed too thick to be mere coincidence. Curtis was right. Nina was involved. Drew was complicit. And Willow was made a fool. But she's not the kind of woman to simply cry in the corner anymore. No, something inside her begins to calcify. The pain becomes something else, something dangerous. She watches Drew prepare for their ceremony, smiling as if nothing has happened, completely unaware that the woman walking down the aisle has already made a different vow, one of retribution. Her mind, flooded with memories of her illness, of the fear of dying, of how Drew held her hand and whispered promises while sleeping with Nina behind her back, begins to crack open like glass under pressure. The emotional chaos inside her no longer has boundaries. Her hands tremble not from nerves, but from fury. Her heart pounds not from love, but from rage. And her grip on sanity teeters dangerously close to collapse. What if she doesn't walk down that aisle to say, "I do"? What if she walks down that aisle to say, "I know"? What if she walks with something hidden beneath her bouquet, something cold, metallic, and final? What if this is no longer a wedding but a reckoning cloaked in white silk and forced smiles? Port Charles would never forget a bride who pulled a weapon from her gown and turned a betrayal into bloodshed. But for Willow, it might be the only way she can make the pain stop. She doesn't want to hurt anyone. She wants to be understood. She wants the world to know what they did to her. She wants someone to see that this isn't just about infidelity, it's about manipulation. About being used as a pawn in a game she never agreed to play. She wants them to feel what she felt when the truth landed like a bullet in her chest. And in that twisted symmetry, she imagines that maybe Drew should feel the same. Maybe, just maybe, one shot could take all of this unbearable weight and silence it forever. It's not about revenge. It's about release. It's about taking back control in a life where she has been stripped of it at every turn. First by illness, then by family, now by love. And as that thought curls around her like a serpent, whispering that peace only comes through fire, the line between heartbreak and madness begins to blur. Liesel sees it in her eyes. Sasha feels the tension in her silence. Even Curtis, who tried to warn her, begins to worry that the confession he offered might have done more harm than good. But it's too late. The seed has been planted. And what grows from it will not be forgiveness. In that climactic moment, whether she pulls the trigger or not, Willow is changed forever. The girl who once believed in healing, in redemption, in hope, is gone. In her place stands a woman who has tasted the depth of human cruelty and decided not to drown in it. Port Charles is not ready for the storm that Willow has become. And Drew, standing at the altar, waiting with hope in his eyes and lies in his past, may not realize he's already lost everything. Because Willow, now consumed by the truth, may never return to the version of herself he betrayed. And in that sense, his punishment has already begun. Scout had always longed for something simple, a family that felt whole, stable, and hers to believe in. For a child whose life had already seen too many separations. Whispered arguments behind closed doors, and strange adults passing through as if love were temporary, the dream of a steady, unbroken family had become her secret hope. Drew had been that anchor, strong, present, warm in his promises. But the moment she saw the truth unraveling before her eyes, something inside her broke. The image of her father. The man she trusted with her world, entangled in betrayal, poisoned her belief in love. It wasn't supposed to be this way. The lies had bled into her bones. The pain became physical. Her breath shortened. Her knees buckled. She collapsed. Drew's scream came too late. The damage was done. Doctors were called. Panic overtook everything. Scout's collapse wasn't just emotional. It was a warning sign. Monitors beeped. Portia rushed in. Jason returned, eyes full of guilt. Willow wept beside her. Drew's shame deepened. Scout lay unconscious. A child now bore the weight of betrayal and chaos. Her innocence shattered. Her future uncertain. This was no longer just about love lost, it was about a legacy of broken promises and a hospital room full of guilt. Scout had become the symbol of everything they destroyed. Scout had always longed for something simple, a family that felt whole, stable, and hers to believe in. For a child whose life had already seen too many separations. Whispered arguments behind closed doors, and strange adults passing through as if love were temporary, the dream of a steady, unbroken family had become her secret hope. Drew had been that anchor, strong, present, warm in his promises. But the moment she saw the truth unraveling before her eyes, something inside her broke. The image of her father. The man she trusted with her world, entangled in betrayal, poisoned her belief in love. It wasn't supposed to be this way. The lies had bled into her bones. The pain became physical. Her breath shortened. Her knees buckled. She collapsed. Drew's scream came too late. The damage was done. Doctors were called. Panic overtook everything. Scout's collapse wasn't just emotional. It was a warning sign. Monitors beeped. Portia rushed in. Jason returned, eyes full of guilt. Willow wept beside her. Drew's shame deepened. Scout lay unconscious. A child now bore the weight of betrayal and chaos. Her innocence shattered. Her future uncertain. This was no longer just about love lost, it was about a legacy of broken promises and a hospital room full of guilt. Scout had become the symbol of everything they destroyed. Scout had always longed for something simple, a family that felt whole, stable, and hers to believe in. For a child whose life had already seen too many separations. Whispered arguments behind closed doors, and strange adults passing through as if love were temporary, the dream of a steady, unbroken family had become her secret hope. Drew had been that anchor, strong, present, warm in his promises. But the moment she saw the truth unraveling before her eyes, something inside her broke. The image of her father. The man she trusted with her world, entangled in betrayal, poisoned her belief in love. It wasn't supposed to be this way. The lies had bled into her bones. The pain became physical. Her breath shortened. Her knees buckled. She collapsed. Drew's scream came too late. The damage was done. Doctors were called. Panic overtook everything. Scout's collapse wasn't just emotional. It was a warning sign. Monitors beeped. Portia rushed in. Jason returned, eyes full of guilt. Willow wept beside her. Drew's shame deepened. Scout lay unconscious. A child now bore the weight of betrayal and chaos. Her innocence shattered. Her future uncertain. This was no longer just about love lost. It was about a legacy of broken promises and a hospital room full of guilt. Scout had become the symbol of everything they destroyed. Willow's escape following the shooting of Drew wasn't just an impulsive act of heartbreak, it was the ignition of a storm that would consume Port Charles from the inside out. In the seconds following the echo of the gunshot, silence fell over the ceremony like a velvet curtain being drawn over the corpse of something once pure. But under that silence was the brewing sound of chaos, rising, screaming through every crack of the Quartermain estate, ripping apart the carefully orchestrated illusion of peace. Drew had collapsed. Blood soaking through his crisp white shirt as screams erupted, yet the bride, the woman whose eyes had moments earlier been filled with tears of confusion and betrayal, was gone. Vanished. No hesitation. No backward glance. She had done what she came to do. And what no one knew in those first few minutes was that Willow's disappearance was not the frantic escape of a woman undone, but the cold execution of a plan designed in secret and carried out with precision. The revelation of Drew's long-standing affair with Nina had gutted Willow's final reservoir of trust. But it wasn't just the affair. It was the depth of the deception, the cruelty of having lied for more than a year, the knowledge that while she had suffered through illness and fear, the man who vowed to protect her had been sharing his passion with her mother. And when the truth finally came to light, it wasn't Drew who confessed, it was Curtis, whose own tangled web of grievances led him to drop the bomb during the ceremony, just as Willow stood poised to pledge her life to a man whose betrayal echoed her deepest nightmares. But even Curtis, in all his dramatic self-righteousness, didn't know that Willow had already been unraveling, already standing at the edge of something dark. Isaiah had seen it. He had watched from the sidelines, studying the fractures that no one else noticed. Isaiah had always kept a distance from the power structures of Port Charles, his presence quiet but calculated. But when he saw what Drew had done, not just to Willow but to Scout, to Jason, to the entire ecosystem of those who trusted him, Isaiah made a choice. He wouldn't intervene to stop Willow. He would help her disappear. And he wouldn't be alone. Portia, reeling from her own failures, felt the raw pull of revenge too. She had tried to play by the rules. And the rules had destroyed families, broken children, and empowered liars like Drew. So when Willow came to her, silent and shaking, gun in her bag, eyes hollow and filled with fury, Portia didn't call the police. She handed Willow a burner phone, gave her an address off the grid, and whispered, "When it's done, call me." And when the shot rang out, Portia was already erasing records. Isaiah was already wiping digital traces. The plan was in motion. They weren't hiding a crime, they were orchestrating a correction. A necessary purge of a man whose existence had grown too toxic to contain. But the thing none of them expected was the collateral damage. Scout had seen the blood. She had seen her father fall. She had felt something tear inside her, something fragile and deeply buried. She collapsed minutes after Willow fled, her small body overwhelmed by trauma she couldn't name. The medical team worked furiously, Jason shouting orders, his mind splintering between grief and rage. And as Scout was rushed into surgery, Jason realized that this wasn't just about betrayal anymore, this was war. A war that Drew had started, and Willow, Isaiah, and Portia were willing to end by any means necessary. The hospital became a battleground of whispers and panic. Nina was catatonic, her face pale, her hands trembling, repeating Willow's name like a prayer for absolution. Michael was missing, vanished into the wind, possibly searching for Willow, possibly plotting retribution. Liesel stood at Nina's side, but even she could not contain the unraveling. Curtis, for his part, vanished into guilt, regretting the revelation that had triggered everything but refusing to recant. And still, Drew clung to life. The bullet had missed his heart but not by much. He remained in critical condition, drifting between lucidity and coma, every breath punctuated by machines and silence. But Willow was already gone. She had crossed state lines with Isaiah's help. Hidden in safe houses, moving under new identities, slipping through surveillance as if born to disappear. But she didn't hide out of fear. She was waiting. For the right moment. For the confirmation that Drew would either survive and face justice, or die and leave the world free of his poison. Isaiah and Portia kept her updated. Their hands now soaked in the same darkness they helped nurture. And in the quiet between updates, Willow wrote. Not love letters. Not apologies. But manifestos. Testimonies. She poured every ounce of her fury, her despair, her righteous fire into pages of truth. Truth about what Drew had done, about how no one had protected her, about how silence had become complicity. And when those letters began surfacing in Port Charles, left anonymously at the foot of hospital beds, at police stations, in Jason's mailbox, the city began to fracture. Public opinion shifted. Was she mad? Or was she justified? Had she snapped? Or had she awakened? And the question everyone began to fear was no longer, where is Willow, but what happens when she comes back? Because Portia and Isaiah knew the truth, Willow wasn't done. She wasn't hiding forever. She was planning her return. And when she did, it would not be for forgiveness. It would be for reckoning. And whether Drew lived or died, whether the city condemned her or embraced her, Willow had already transformed. She was no longer a victim. She was a storm. And Port Charles had only seen the first lightning strike. Jason had always lived by a code forged through years of violence, loss, and silence. He wasn't a man of sentiment. And he rarely allowed himself the luxury of emotion, but what had unfolded in the aftermath of Drew's shooting shook him to the core. The chaos that had erupted at the wedding had not only destroyed whatever illusion of peace had remained but had also left Scout, his niece, his responsibility, broken and vulnerable in a hospital bed. Clinging to life. Willow's act of desperation had blown open a vault of secrets that no one was prepared to confront, and as Drew hovered between life and death, Jason found himself at a crossroads unlike anything he had ever faced. He didn't just have to care for Drew. He had to piece together the shattered fragments of a family that had collapsed under the weight of deception, betrayal, and suppressed pain. Scout's medical crisis became the epicenter of Jason's world. He spent sleepless nights at her side, his hand wrapped around hers. Silently praying to a God he wasn't sure he believed in that she would survive. And in those long hours, Jason made a vow, not just to keep her safe, but to uncover every truth that had led to this moment and make sure nothing like it ever happened again. His loyalty to Monica, his sense of duty to the Quartermaines, and his love for Scout converged into a singular mission: restore order, protect what was left, and destroy whatever threat remained. That threat, as Jason would soon learn, extended far beyond Willow's finger on the trigger. Isaiah and Portia were already being watched. Jason could see it in their eyes, the flickers of panic, the rehearsed deflections, the nervous glances when Drew's name was mentioned. They were hiding something, and Jason, though no longer with the WSB, still possessed the instincts of a man trained to dismantle lies. Every interaction, every detail, he filed away. He noticed the way Portia rerouted hospital staff from Drew's room, the way Isaiah seemed to have access to restricted areas. The way Willow's personal belongings had vanished too quickly, too cleanly, from the bridal suite. This wasn't just chaos, it was orchestration. Someone had helped Willow escape. Someone had planned for this. But Jason didn't act on impulse. He watched. He waited. And all the while, he devoted himself to Scout's recovery and Drew's care. The doctors weren't optimistic about Drew's condition. The bullet had done significant internal damage, and he remained unconscious for days. Jason stayed anyway. Because despite everything, despite the betrayal, the infidelity, and the pain, Drew was still family. And Jason understood the burden of being lost in yourself, of making mistakes you could never undo. He wouldn't let Drew die, not without facing the consequences of what he had done. He wouldn't let Scout lose her father without ever understanding why. But the emotional toll was mounting. As Scout slowly regained consciousness, her first words weren't for Jason, they were questions about her father. Why did Willow hurt him? Is Daddy going to die? Jason didn't have the answers. But he held her through the tears and promised that no matter what happened, he would never leave her. And he meant it. He became her anchor, not just in word, but in action, reading her favorite books, pushing her wheelchair down hospital corridors, shielding her from the questions and stares of curious staff and press. But even as he nurtured her, Jason was unraveling inside. Each moment of calm was pierced by memories of Monica, her guidance, her resilience, and the home she had built, now tainted by violence. Her death, still shrouded in mystery, hovered like a specter over everything. Jason couldn't shake the suspicion that Drew's lies had extended beyond his affair with Nina. There was something more. Something dark. And Monica had known it. Jason began combing through Monica's personal effects, her letters, her encrypted files. What he found was both damning and terrifying. A private message from Monica dated only weeks before her death alluded to a confrontation with Drew. She wrote of betrayal, of being watched, of fearing that someone close to her was involved in something dangerous. And then she was gone. The autopsy had ruled her death natural, but Jason no longer believed in coincidence. Drew's affair wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was a symptom of a larger disease. And just as Jason started to uncover pieces of a puzzle no one else dared to touch, a letter arrived. Anonymous. Delivered in an envelope bearing no return address. Inside, a single photograph, Willow standing in a gas station parking lot in Pennsylvania, alive, looking directly into the camera. On the back, 2 words were scrawled in black ink, not alone. Jason's pulse quickened. Willow was alive, but she wasn't hiding in fear. She was planning something. And if she wasn't alone, the implications were staggering. Isaiah? Portia? Someone else? Whoever it was, they were helping her for a reason. The letter changed everything. Jason ramped up his investigation. Enlisting old allies, bribing tech specialists, quietly surveilling Portia and Isaiah while continuing to act as the grieving uncle and brother. But beneath the mask of calm, he was preparing for war. Because the deeper he dug, the more he realized that Drew's betrayal might have been orchestrated. That someone had wanted Willow to break. That Monica's death, Scout's collapse, the destruction of the wedding, it had all been a chain reaction set off by an invisible hand. And Jason had no intention of letting that hand remain hidden. He would tear apart every lie, expose every false alliance, and if necessary, burn down whatever was left of Port Charles to keep Scout safe and honor Monica's memory. The weight of responsibility bore down on him like never before. He hadn't asked for this. But now that it had begun, he wouldn't back down. Not for Drew. Not for Portia. Not even for Willow, whose actions, while tragic, had endangered everyone Jason cared about. This was no longer about justice, it was about truth. And as Jason stared into the early morning light filtering through the hospital blinds, watching Scout sleep peacefully for the first time in days, he knew, whatever it took, whatever the cost, he would not stop until every lie was laid bare and every secret brought to light. Because he was no longer just a protector. He was a reckoner. And Port Charles had no idea what was coming.